Tom Seeley is the Horace White Professor in Biology at Cornell University and author of Wisdom of the Hive, Honeybee Democracy, and Following the Wild Bees. And he's going to be talking, I think, about Darwinian beekeeping.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Mark, for organizing this, and Bonnie, too, getting it all pulled together. It's, just as Mark said, the coolest meeting I've ever been to in terms of being stimulated by ideas and just leaving this place feeling like, oh, okay, I've got a lot of work to do to build on these ideas. Now, Mark, I hope I don't mess you up. I'm going to violate Chatham House rule. I'm going to mention the name of somebody, Charles Darwin, but he won't mind. Because what I'm going to share with you is an audacious idea, which it's a new idea, which I like to call Darwinian beekeeping. Some of you may have heard about Darwinian medicine. It's the same idea of the logic of applying Darwin's understanding of how evolution works, produces organisms that are well adapted to their problems, but applying it to beekeeping. Here's how. The heart of this idea is that we beekeepers allow our colonies to live as they have evolved to live in nature, rather than to manipulate them to live in ways that benefit us, work best for us. And in other words, the idea here is to let the bees live in our hives as they do in the wild. And when we do this, we do two things. And when I say live in the wild, I mean out in a bee tree, as we see over here on the left. When we let them live that way, first of all, we respect the natural features of their behavior and physiology. And these are traits, these are parts of their biology which they've been exquisitely shaped by natural selection to help them survive and reproduce, just as in our own bodies, of course. And secondly, and in a longer-term way, by letting them live as they have evolved to live, we allow, and not interfere, we allow natural selection to continue to operate on these bees. And this is especially important with respect to maintaining their resistance to diseases. Let's see, how do I go to the next slide? Right. Here are some examples of non-Darwinian beekeeping, which is what we do. It's what those of you that are beekeepers, we've been taught, and that's what makes this idea a bit audacious. These are forms of non-Darwinian beekeeping. What do? We purchase queens from a different climate region. What do we end up with? We end up often with bees that are not well adapted to the climate where we're living. Buying bees from Georgia, bringing them to New York State, for example. What else do? We crowd colonies in apiaries. What's the effect of that? Well, first of all, that's very different than how they live in the wild. They're widely spaced. Crowding them into apiaries fosters the spread of diseases and indeed favors the evolution of virulent strains of their diseases. Third, we eliminate aggressive colonies. How many beekeepers here have requeened a really aggressive colony? Well, we're just learning that those colonies that are most aggressive are also the most vigorous. They make the most honey. They're probably better in many ways, best in many ways. We also house our colonies in large, thin-walled hives. Putting them in large hives means they don't swarm. It's a kind of birth control for the colonies. We're slowing their reproduction or stopping their reproduction. Thin-walled hives, unlike a thick-walled tree, makes it harder for the bees to keep their nests warm. And last but not least, and this isn't really last, just the last on my list, we treat them for varroa. And thus we eliminate, by protecting them, we eliminate selection for resistance against this deadly parasite. Well, in closing, I will acknowledge that Darwinian beekeeping is not practical for everyone. It's most easily practiced by the hobby beekeeper who has just a few colonies. But because its logic applies to all beekeepers, I feel that this is an audacious idea that every beekeeper should ponder to understand fully his or her relationship with the bees. Thank you.